So for the context of this video, I suggest you to go back and watch my previous talk video regarding important range. Although either way I'll give you context anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. Anyways, I want to talk about how speed affects range and why is it inconsistent. Mind you that these are all technically speculations, but I really don't think there's any other fitting explanation than this. Take an example again, this Kachi here. Kachi has 460 range, Sloth has 450. Kachi is supposed to stand outside of Sloth's range, yet for some reason Kachi gets hit by the Sloth. Why? Well, the short answer is because Kachi moves so fast that it moves farther than it should. That's it. Really, that's it. If that's as in-depth as you want me to be, then this is the end of the video for you. But to go deeper on this, let me provide you some more clips for context about what I'm going to say. Continuing from this clip, Kachi got hit enough to get knocked back and once again rushes back into place. Except this time he actually doesn't get hit by the Sloth. You might think, well, that's odd. Isn't it supposed to move so fast that it stands inside Sloth's range? Perhaps you think that the whole problem about speed and range are just a complete random inconsistency, which is not entirely wrong, but then what's the reasoning behind that? Moving on to another clip, this is the clip of Chillcat who has 200 range and Scizoroo who has 199. Similar to Kachi, Chillcat seemed to stand outside of Scizoroo's range despite having one more range. One might say it's inconsistent, but from what you see here, Chill seems to always gets outranged by Scizoroo somehow. But when you move Scizoroo, despite being outranged all these times, miraculously, Chill can outrange Scizoroo. So what happens here? I'm going to need to explain this using like a diagram or something, but before that, keep in mind that Battlecats runs in 30 FPS, and for simplicity's sake, I will assume that Battlecats checks their physics at the same rate per second, so they basically check a unit's range and all that as often as the graphic changes. Shoutouts to Konga for our discussion on this, by the way. I do hope that you have at least a little base knowledge in like frames in games and such, cause if not, then this might be a bit too confusing. But anyways, now again with what I said earlier, this assumes that the unit never moves smoothly. Rather, they teleport a certain distance every frames in a second. Again, considering 30 FPS and 30 distance checks per second, this means that they teleport a certain distance 30 times in a second. This distance is of course determined by speed. Higher speed means higher distance traveled per frame. Lower speed means lower distance. I think you're starting to see what I'm getting at if you haven't before. Let's take the Kachi clip again. In here, since Sloth was standing motionless, his speed is irrelevant. Kachi's true form has a speed of 48. Now mind you that I do not know how much range a unit actually travels based on their speed. But for simplicity's sake again, let's just assume from now on that a unit moves a distance half of their speed per frame. Again, this is just assumption. So we assume Kachi moves 24 units of range per frame. Sloth has a 450 and Kachi has a 460 range. Remember that Kachi will stop moving once Kachi and Sloth are under 460 range away from each other. Assume that after spawning Kachi, at one point in one of the frames, Kachi is 493 units away from the Sloth. Again, the Sloth doesn't move because of Metal Cat, so his speed is irrelevant. The next frame, Kachi moves 24 units closer to the Sloth, so now he is 469 units away from the Sloth. Since this is still above 460 range, Kachi does not detect the Sloth and will keep moving into the next frame. And what do you know, next frame he moves by another 24 and now he stands at 445 units away from the Sloth. Now being under 460 range, Kachi finally stops moving because it detects an enemy in its range. But unfortunately for Kachi, they're also standing inside the range of the enemy Sloth. But then what happens afterwards? If you remember correctly, Kachi gets knocked back and then magically now outranges Sloth. Well, let us assume that Kachi gets knocked back by 350 range, another assumption. Since he was standing 445 range away from the Sloth, he now gets knocked to 795 range away from the Sloth, and will then start moving again at normal speed. After 10 frames, he has moved 240 range and is now standing at 555 range. The next frame they're at 531 distance from each other, and the next 507, and the next 483, and the next 459. 459 is already under 460, and that means Kachi already detects an enemy at this range, and because of that, Kachi won't move the next frame. So now we got Kachi standing at 459 range away from the Sloth, while the Sloth does not have Kachi in its range like before. This time the Sloth's attack won't be able to reach Kachi. From this, I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together on the clip for Chill and Scizoroo on why Chill can consistently outrange Scizoroo at one point. Since Scizoroo never moves from the spot and Chill always spawns at the exact same position from the base, the distance travel will be consistent, and therefore once Scizoroo stands at a position where Chill would clip inside Scizoroo's range, then it will always happen as long as Scizoroo stands at the same position. Chill always spawns from the base, so they're all the same too. The whole repositioning thing also applies to this clip of Peach Angels. First time spawning, Peach Angels got clipped inside, but then he gets knocked back, got repositioned, but still clips inside Laboine's range. But this time Peach Angel stands at a different range from the first time he entered Laboine's range, so when he gets knocked back, he also gets knocked back into a different range from a second time he gets knocked back, resulting in a different standing range the third time he goes forward, which then ends up with him standing in a position where he can stand outside of Laboine. That was probably way too confusing, but explaining it with example would take too much time. Anyways, that really is all there is to it. That is also why you might see me and some people saying in the previous video that if Battle Cats were to run at higher frames per second, this whole problem would probably happen much less often. As for example, if this runs at 60 FPS, then instead of moving 24 units per frame, Tachi would move 12 units per frame, which can prevent the clip problem from happening much more often. Albeit the clip can still happen, just much less often. That is all. I hope you understand. If you don't, then it really doesn't matter. It honestly won't affect the gameplay by much at all, as long as you know that high speed means generally last actual standing range. It's just another piece of obscure trivia that no one actually cares about in this community. Well, that's it. See you again later in my next collab video. Oh, by collab, I mean a collab between my Meechills and Jizzo as they work together to defeat the enemy. Hey, what? No, that's not clickbait, that's literally what collab means, that's collaboration, right? What? No, I don't clickbait, that's collab! That's a collaboration between Jizzo and Meechill, come on, it's true!